Welcome to Dr. Lotte Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lotte and the host of this podcast. Today, I am very excited to introduce Lynne McTaggart. Lynne McTaggart is one of the central authorities on the new science and consciousness. She is the award-winning author of 7 books, including the worldwide bestsellers, The Field, The Intention Experiment, and The Power of 8. She's also a co-founder of the international magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You, and the health expo Get Well, and the architect of the Intention Experiments, a web-based global laboratory to test the power of intention to heal the world. She's a highly sought-after public speaker and is consistently listed as one of the world's 100 most spiritually influential people. So welcome, Lynn. It's such an honor to have you as a guest today.
Thank you, Lotte. It's wonderful to be here.
I read some of your books in the early 2000s, and I'm so excited for you to be here today and share all that information with the listeners. And we're going to go into your latest book as well, The Power of 8. But for those that are not familiar with your books and work, can you start by just giving an overview of The Field?
Absolutely. So I wanted to find out why spiritual healing works. This was back in the 1990s. I kept coming across very good studies of spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute, if somebody can have a thought and send them to someone else and have that person get better, that in itself undermines everything we understand about how the universe works. So I thought this will be an easy prospect. I'll speak to some researchers, physicists, biologists doing consciousness research, and they'll be able to tell me that there's something like human energy fields going on, and I'll be able to write it up, and that'll be very simple. It wasn't like that at all. When I started researching and speaking to these scientists, I discovered to my astonishment that they had discovered a tiny piece of what compounded together into a completely new science, a completely new view of the world. So what I really discovered, and what the scientists were individually and collectively showing, is that we are not these separate self-contained entities as described by the science of Isaac Newton. We are a collection of essentially charged particles having a relationship. We are energy packets, packets of vibrating energy at our subatomic core. And all of that energy trades with other subatomic energy, almost like a subatomic game of tennis. And that together creates a giant quantum field. That field unites all of us in its invisible web. And it's so energy dense that if you were sitting across from me, the energy between us would be enough to boil all the oceans of the world. It's that energy incredible. I mean, we could create some amazing bombs from empty space if we knew how to harness this energy. So there was that as part of the field. But there were also other discoveries that our molecules communicate with each other, not through chemistry, but through frequency. And each molecule has its own unique sound. And by sound, I mean a sound lower than anything the human being can hear. But essentially, that is vibration. And they communicate with each other through energy. We also discovered through the great work of the late Fritz Albert Popp, a German physicist, that all living things are emitting a tiny current of light. That light source comes from DNA and is like a master conductor. It conducts what is going on in the cells, but it also communicates with the outside world. They discovered that there is synchronicitous conversations going on between living things, us and all living things, so that we are sending out light and there are replies. There are synergistic replies from other living things. So we are communicators inside and outside our bodies via this light. And most extraordinary of all, the work of Dr. Carl Pribram, demonstrating that our brains are not the repository of information, that thoughts are not locked inside our skulls, but are trespassers. And our brains, rather than having all consciousness just locked inside, are more like antenna receivers, and that we're receiving information outside in the field. So the field gives us two extraordinary implications. Number one, that we are all on our subatomic level connected, but also that we have access to all information. The field is, as one scientist put it, like a shadow universe. It's information of everything that ever was. And being able to access this information, which we all can do because we're all part of this field. We don't have to enter the field. We are the field. We're part of the field. But accessing this information gives us a wonderful and tidy blueprint for how we have all of this extrasensory power. So the other part of the field that I explored were scientists who were discovering essentially that thoughts are things, but not only things, but things that affect other things. And also there is no such thing as time and space. There is only one big smeared out now and one big smeared out here. So things are connected through non-locality, a known and acknowledged effect of quantum physics. And also, the other part of that is that we are co-creators, that subatomic particles aren't an actual something yet. They're a potential of something. They're like not just one seat in the auditorium, but every seat all at the same moment. And that what collapses that down to an actual entity is observation, the involvement of an observer. We are co-creating our world all the time. So all of these implications were extraordinary in terms of what our universe truly is, what we as human beings truly are.
I mean, it's just fascinating because when I work with ancestral healing, I see that during my near-death experience, I understood that. And now that the science is there to back all that up, that we're all connected, we're all one, the information is readily available. The brain, the way after my near-death experience, the brain just became the computer that accesses the information in the cloud. Right?
That's it.
Right.
That's it. That's right. That's it. Absolutely.
And it's just fascinating. Now, I remember reading in your book about the experiments and the intention experiments and how you would have people on one side of the world setting the intention for seeds to grow faster in Tucson, Arizona, and things would actually change because of people setting that intention. So can you tell us a little bit about what happens when you get a group together and they set an intention for something or the outcome of some of those?
Absolutely. So my leftover business from the field was how far we can take this, because I was convinced that thoughts are things that affect other things. There were many experiments demonstrating this, but I wanted to know, being the investigative reporter by background that I am, I wanted to find out how far we can take this. You know, are we talking about curing cancer with our thoughts? Or are we only talking about subtle effects like shifting quantum particles? Does it only work in the laboratory? And what happens if loads of people are thinking the same thought at the same time? Does that magnify the effect? So that was the big question I asked. And I decided to write the book, The Intention Experiment, not only to convince people of all of the evidence for the power of intention and how thoughts do affect our reality, but also it was an invitation to take part in massive intention experiments. So at that time, I realized that I had a lot of readers because the field was in about 30 languages at the time. And I also knew a lot of these quantum scientists, these consciousness researchers. And I thought if I just put them together, I'll have the biggest global laboratory in the world to really test this out. So that's what I did. I started in 2007, and I worked with scientists who were part of prestigious universities around the world, like University of Arizona, University of California, Penn State, University of Freiburg, and many, many more. Princeton. So we started out very simply, just trying to make leaves affect the subtle process of a leaf, and also making plants grow faster, seeds grow faster. So one of those experiments was amazing. I was working with the University of Arizona, Dr. Gary Schwartz, the noted psychologist, and his laboratory for consciousness research. So they designed 4 sets of seeds, 30 seeds each, labeled A, B, C, D, took photos of them, gave them to me. I decided to run this first experiment in front of a live audience because I was going to Sydney, Australia to speak to an audience of about 700. We did. I had them choose the seeds. We didn't tell the scientists which ones we chose. We did our intention to this. I showed up the 4 photos and we chose them. We did the intention to the photo. We then finished. I told the scientists, then I phoned them and said, we're done. Still didn't tell them which seeds we did. And they planted the seeds and then measured them 5 days later. Lo and behold, at that point, I unblinded the study, and it turned out the seeds sent intention grew significantly higher than controls. So just think about this for a moment. We are in Sydney, Australia. The seeds are actually in Tucson, Arizona, 8,000 miles away. That is, if you go around the globe via California. Furthermore, we weren't sending intention to the seeds themselves. We were sending intention to a photograph of the seeds, a photographic representation of the seeds, a symbol of the seeds. Nevertheless, we were able to zone in on those particular seeds and affect them via intention. And we ran that study 5 more times in different locations. So once in front of an audience of 100 in Rhinebeck, New York, and then a big audience in South Carolina and Dallas, Texas, Los Angeles, and then over the internet with my audience around the world. Every single time, the seed sent intention grew significantly higher than controls. So that was just one of many. We've run 40 to date, everything besides seeds and leaves, like purifying water. We ran a series of water experiments, lowering violence in war-torn areas. We've run about 10 of those, and even trying to heal somebody of post-traumatic stress disorder. Of those 40, 36 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. And we've done these experiments with lots of different scientists, as I mentioned, from all of those universities, also St. Petersburg, Russia, a quantum physicist named Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, who's part of what was then called St. Petersburg Technical University. So we've been able to show through all kinds of effects that thoughts actually do affect other things, and that we can measure them and demonstrate this.
I mean, it's just amazing how much power we have and that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the book, The Power of 8?
Sure. So Around 2008, after we'd been getting all of these extraordinary experiences with the big intention experiments, I wondered what would happen if I scaled this down to a workshop setting. But I wasn't really sure how to do this. And so I was kicking around the idea with my husband and a few members of my team. And I said, I don't know, maybe I'll put people in a group of 8 or so and have them send intention to someone with a health challenge. And my husband is a great headline writer. And he said, I love it, the power of 8. And that is truly what we did. We put people into groups of 8 or so at our first workshop in Chicago. We expected it to be a very mild effect, like getting your back rubbed or something like that. Somebody just rubbing your shoulders or getting a facial. And we sent the people away. We did it at the end of a Saturday for our weekend workshop, then sent them away and had them come back the next day and asked, when we began the second day, we asked the participants who'd been intended for, tell us how that was. Again, expecting it to be this very mild effect, nice and relaxing. And what they came out with was nothing like that. What they said were things like this. I have arthritis. I've been limping all weekend and I'm not limping anymore. Somebody else, I have depression, periodic depression. It's ongoing and it feels like it's lifted. Somebody else, I have irritable bowel syndrome. My gut is always bad and it's now great. Somebody else, I have cataracts and they're about 80% better. So we were totally shocked by all of this. And I was very disbelieving. I thought, oh, well, this is just a placebo effect. So I had to keep testing it. And I tested it and tested it. Wherever I would do a workshop or talk, I would put people into groups of 8 or so. It doesn't have to be 8, by the way. It works with 6, it works with 12. 8's a sort of Goldilocks figure that has a lot of mythical meaning to it. The Chinese believe 8 is a lucky number. It's a sideways infinity figure. And so there's a lot of meaning attached to it, symbolic and sacred geometry meaning to it. But for me, it was just plucked out of the air, or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But I have seen that Power of 8 works with when it's not exactly 8. So we kept doing it and we kept seeing these extraordinary, extraordinary effects. I have seen 2 people get up out of their wheelchair, one of whom was paralyzed from the neck down. Somebody else had multiple sclerosis and pushed away her wheelchair. I've seen loads and loads of stage 4 cancer healings. We had a woman in a retreat of mine last September who didn't even think she could make it. She was so ill with stage 4 cancer, and her cancer is gone now. And she credits the impetus for the whole change of the healing with a Power of 8 group that was held in our special site. We held it at a historic stately home called Broughton Hall in Yorkshire, the whole workshop. And I think her big intention was in a historic library. So I've seen that. I've seen people heal their relationships. I've seen people heal their finances and careers. I've seen people, create all kinds of new careers. I've seen them create new life purposes. But it is extraordinary. And my book, The Power of 8, also attempted to try to answer why. Why is this all happening? And I came up with several reasons. Number one, there is, of course, the power of intention. Thoughts are things that affect other things. There is also a group effect. There are group effects always. The French psychologist Emile Durkheim called it collective effervescence. We just light each other up when we're in a group. There is the piece that I think is really important, which is altruism. 7/8 of the time in a Power of 8 group, you're sending intention out for someone else. And yet here was the great, amazing part of it. I saw in my intention experiments and also our Power of Eight groups an extraordinary rebound effect. With our intention experiments, I always survey people. I have done so since 2008. And what I've found is over and over again, people report extraordinary healings of themselves. About a third to 40% of people in every intention experiment report their own personal healing, or they've got incredibly better. They report their lives becoming more peaceful, or making up with estranged partners or relatives or children. So I see that, but I also see it in the Power of Eight groups. It almost doesn't matter if you're a receiver or a sender. The senders also have extraordinary healings. When people, as I call it, get off of themselves, that is when a lot of healing occurs. I've seen it with people who were stuck, people like Lisa, who is a bodywork practitioner, and she wanted to write a book, but she wasn't an author. And she was stalled because she kept working through different editors and was getting nowhere. She was also terrified by the whole aspect of looking stupid by marketing. And so she didn't know what to do. I finally said to her, she was in one of my master classes. I said, Lisa, get off of yourself. Intend for someone else. She did. She intended for a woman, Diane, who needed money, needed more things than she did. The next week after her intention, she has this overwhelming impulse to go into a store. She doesn't even need something in that store on her main street. She goes in. There she sees somebody who is a distant acquaintance. She says hello to them, and the woman comes up to her and starts chatting with her and says, you know, what are you doing, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it turns out the woman was a publisher, but now happens to be a book coach. And when she hears about Lisa's project, she offers to coach her through the whole thing, which she does. She gets it published. Upshot is the book becomes an Amazon bestseller. So I've seen that over and over and over again. I've seen all kinds of healings over and over again when people do intention for someone else. A guy called Wes, who was deeply depressed ever since he had been recruited against his will to serve in the last year of Vietnam. He had been at college and studying to be a biochemist or a doctor when he was pulled out and there was no draft deferment and he had to go. And it was such a traumatic experience that he experienced depression after that for the rest of his life. So he was 65 when I met him, deeply depressed. He'd also lost the love of his life, had been overwhelmed by medical bills for her, lost his house. And by the time I met him, it was almost like he had reached the what's the use stage. So he did an intention for someone else because he was part of a Power of Eight group and he was going to put himself forward. But there was a woman in the group with stage 4 cancer. So he thought, well, she needs it more. So he was just a sender. But the night he had extraordinary experiences after it, particularly the second night after that intention, he had this vision of himself as a 19-year-old meeting him. It was almost like his 19-year-old self speaking to him. And in this dream, vision, lucid dream, the 19-year-old said, don't worry, there's still time. And Wes became a totally different person. He started exercising again. He started being social again. He had tried to avoid people. He was up bright and early. He began studying new things. He began writing again. He had a completely new lease on life. So I've seen it just as much with the senders as the receivers with Power of Eight. So it's altruism. And the science of altruism is clear. Altruism is like a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people live longer, healthier, happier lives. There's no question. If you have an illness and you help somebody with the same illness, you're more likely to be healed. But there's one other piece of it that's really important, and that is the experience of oneness. And we discovered this because I was still so curious about why this was all going on, that we did some brainwave studies with Life University, which is one of the most prestigious chiropractic universities in the world. They were interested in my Power of Eight work, so they put a team of neuroscientists at my disposal. So we had these studies with student volunteers. We had, I think, about 7 Power of Eight groups. We put an EEG cap on one member of each of the group. And we discovered that very quickly, within a minute or so, the parts of the brain that make us feel separate were dialed way down. Now, this really shocked the neuroscientists running the experiment because they expected the brainwave signatures during these 10-minute sessions. That's all these Power of Eight groups do. I have them hold it for only 10 minutes. They expected it to look just like meditation, and they looked nothing like meditation. What they looked like were the brainwave signatures of Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer, or Sufi masters during chanting, as recorded by Dr. Andrew Newberg, then at the University of Pennsylvania. So these were people whose parts of the brain making them feel separate, the parietal lobes who sit right back here, tell us what's me, what's not me. They assist in helping us navigate through space. They were dialed way down. And so were parts of the right frontal lobes that are involved in worry, doubt, negativity. They were also dialed way down. So these were people essentially in a state of ecstatic oneness. And I think that is the state where miracles happen. Because, we don't get to experience that. We talk all the time. I do myself. We're all part of the field. We're all part of this quantum field. We're all one. But we don't experience life like that. We experience life as separation. We experience life as lonely people on a lonely planet in a lonely universe. And suddenly, with these Power of Eight groups, we get to experience what oneness really feels like. And as I say, this is our natural state of being, which we don't get to feel too often. And when we do, miracles do happen.
Wow, it's just amazing. So people who are listening thinking, I have cancer or I have all these different physical ailments. How can I heal myself? Can I just set the intention myself, or do I need to get a group together? Do I need to join one of Lynn's groups? Or do you have any recommendations for all the listeners around the world how to go about creating healing intentions?
Sure. So, first of all, my evidence is just this. Intention works individually, no question, but I see that a group supersizes it. There's so much benefit from that. I had a group recently on a masterclass that I was running, and one of them said, I consider my Power of Eight group my virtual first aid kit, because they're all on WhatsApp, she and her group. And whenever she has a problem, a health problem or whatever, she WhatsApps her group. And then they all stop whatever they're doing and do a little intention for her. And she feels the results. So I think a group supersizes it. Think about a group of what were strangers having your back, sending healing intention to you, being totally altruistic. That's not something we ordinarily experience. So there are several ways to start your own group, and I would really recommend it. Number one, you need to know how to do it. And there's a lot of technique involved. Some of the real rudimentaries are in my book, The Power of Eight. So you can set up a group that way. If you want to really learn how to do it, or if you want to join where you are, you have total privacy, you can join my community. And I have a group called the 8 Revolution, where people on my private community site at no cost can join an existing Power of 8 group or create one themselves. And then they get all kinds of free tools from me. If you want to learn about all of the fundamentals, and there are 7 key essentials I've identified, I have many courses that I run, and my level 1 course is called Intention Essentials. And that actually is coming up June 24th. So you can investigate on my website, lynnmctaggart.com, how to join that. And then I teach you 5 sessions. You then have your own private community place with everybody on that course to go back and forth. We have a special mentoring session where you practice all the techniques and you learn all of the ways to word intentions, how to go about handling a Power of 8 group, how to break down your intentions into manageable chunks, how to take baby steps, how to do mental rehearsal, how to deal with fear and negativity, and much, much more. So that's level 1. And I have staged levels on my website. And after that is a year-long masterclass that I run beginning February 5th, where we put you in groups, we monitor you, and I work with you through the whole year to help you become an intention master.
Wow, this is wonderful. And tell me how people can learn more. What is your website? And do you have other in-person events? I know some of these were online, which is great because you can be anywhere in the world and learn how to do this. And it's so needed for more than just even personal healing, but just healing of the world itself, as the world is in a crisis. So tell the listeners how what other things you have coming up. I know you have some in-person events coming up also in the fall.
Absolutely. So first of all, you can work directly with me at a retreat we're running at Broughton Hall, which is a 16th century stately home. It was the runner-up for the location of Downton Abbey, and it's been the location for numerous films and TV sets like Wuthering Heights, Watership Down, Gentleman Jack, and much more. It is a 3,000-acre estate. So we take over the stately home. So our attendees stay in the stately home or one of the beautiful historic cottages that are right on the grounds. And we have a real immersion experience where we not only learn to heal your past, and that's the focus of our workshop, using intention techniques to go back in time and heal your past, and then go forward in time to design your future. But we also have lots of fun things that we do there, like a banquet right in the historic home, right in Broughton Hall, with a 4-piece string quartet and fire pit ceremony and much more. The owners there are very spiritually minded, so they've created this spiritual meeting place, and a beautiful spa, beautiful restaurant, fire pit, labyrinths, all of that kind of thing. So it's a real mix of history and spirituality, which is why we've chosen it. It also is the house now of the famous Princeton University pair research equipment, which now works again. So we give our people an opportunity to experience that equipment and actually play with this mind over matter equipment, which is quite extraordinary. So we have that. I also have live events in London in October, and Switzerland in November, San Diego next January, and more. And I also wanted to let people know that, like you, I'm very concerned about what's happening in the world today. And we don't seem to have any political solutions. We're seeing banking crises again, climate change crisis getting worse, political crises really at breaking point, polarization as never before. And so I sat back one day and said, boy, I need an army of change makers. And then I suddenly realized I have an army of change makers. I have tens of thousands of Power of Eight groups around the world. So what if I brought them together and had them communicate with each other and gave them some tools, free tools for a new world? So that's what I've done. We have a thing on my website, you'll see it under a tab, free tools, called the 8 Revolution. And when you join, we help you get access to a private place on my community pages where you are given free tools. And these tools are to help your Power of Eight group also work together to heal your communities. And that means make them more interactive and connected and loving and less polarized, etc., through many unique intention and other kinds of techniques. It doesn't require giving up the day job. These are little things you can do together as a group that become big changes. And we also are creating a situation where you can communicate with other Power of Eight groups around the world. So check that out too. Everything we offer with the 8 Revolution is totally free.
That's just wonderful. And I'll put those your website in the podcast notes, lynnmctaggart.com. I'll also put in the getwell.solutions and wddty.com. What's the last one for the?
What Doctors Don't Tell You.
That's
It
the one.
is an international magazine that my husband and I run. It's been running as some sort of publication for 32 years. And it started out life as a newsletter, and it looks at what works and what doesn't work in conventional medicine, but also and mainly alternative medicine. We provide evidence that alternative medicine works and what tends to be safer and more effective to heal all manner of illnesses.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you as a guest today and share all your wisdom with the listeners. Is there any final messages or message that you would like to share with the listeners?
Sure. In these troubled times, it's easy to lose heart. And what I've discovered is if you want to succeed, if you want to get through these troubled times, I don't promise that there won't be trouble in your life. I really think that is, irresponsible. What I do promise you, though, with the aid of strong intentions, clear intentions, very specific intentions, which is some of the stuff that I teach, and some other mental exercises and modalities and techniques that we can all learn, you will be able to unlock the power you were born with. We were all born with this power, but it's been denied to us by authority figures as we grew up. Teachers, parents have told us we don't possess it. So we begin to believe them. But the new evidence coming through, and certainly my work, is demonstrating we can all heal ourselves, each other, and the world. You just need to learn how. So in these troubled times, I would say number one is learning about the power you possess inside you. And number two, don't do it alone. Find your healing tribe. Find your power in a group.
Just beautiful words. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest today. It's just been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure too.